good to see. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mark Amodei. I'm the congressional representative for District 2, which is 11 counties in northern Nevada. Does your probation officer know you're here? This is on TV, so I'm not saying any names. Anyhow, this is a continuation. We've started in the 25 and a half months that I've had the job, but who's counting, having a quarterly Veterans Town Hall. The agenda is, there is no agenda. We've been fortunate enough to have folks come from many of the veteran service organizations here. We've got a representative from Senator Heller's office, Glenda. We've also got folks from the regional VA office and also the governor's office of Veterans Affairs. Who else is here? You want to pipe up real quick so everybody knows? VA hospital. Yep. Thank you. And we've got the regional director from Phoenix here for the town hall. We're also fortunate enough to have some folks from one of the committees that I serve on is the Veterans Affairs Committee in the House, and the subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs. We have the staff director, Majority Staff Director Roy Riley is here today. They've been in Reno today, been over at the regional VA office. We've been out to the Veterans Cemetery in Fernley. They're going down to Las Vegas tomorrow to do some more stuff. And then also we've got Lauren Rogan, who is also from the majority staff in the subcommittee here, is Majority Staff Counsel. So they're getting some eyes and ears on what's going on in Nevada and various issues, and have, thank you ladies, graciously said, hey, we'll stop by your Veterans Affairs town meeting, town hall, your quarterly one, just to kind of see what's going on. If there's issues that come up that the committee can help with or the other folks, then that's what we're doing. So with that kind of introduction and in keeping with the no agenda, it's kind of what's on your mind. Who wants to fire away and get us into it? Or if you have questions on what's going on or individual benefit questions, anything else like that, this is your time to fire away.
Well, I'll start because I'm not shy.
So, come on. Fire away. Good to see you.
How are you?
Who's the guy with you today?
I don't know. I picked him up along the road. On Tuesday, February 5th of this year, you had a hearing on the 100% temporary disability rating, the examination of its effective use. In reading everything, I noticed that Ms. Titus asked quite a few questions that were answered with the dog ate my computer and things like that. I noticed you had no questions. Had they all been answered by the time they got to you? And what was the result of that hearing?
Well, the result of the hearing is the Veterans Administration Office is going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, staff members, getting back to us with answers to those. I had no questions because at the time, when they got to me, my questions had already been asked. They ask questions in 5-minute segments, and they go in order of seniority. Remember the part where I said I'd been there for 25 and a half months? That means when they go down the line, guess who's kind of near the end of the line for asking questions? Me. We obviously attend those, we monitor those. I also have here, where's Jason at? Right in front of me. Jason Reeder is my staff guy from DC who's assigned to the Veterans Affairs Committee. So it's like, where did we come out on that? What are we doing? That sort of thing. If you have a specific question, or if you have somebody who's got a rating question, we'll be happy to set you up with, follow the case, get you some help, hook you up with the right folks. I'm not sure though. I don't think they've given us a feedback to that, because one of the meetings that we've had since then is the lack of responsiveness to oversight activities from the office. So,
and that was
Vicki, if that's
in this, there had been 2 years of something that was supposed to have happened in 6 months. So,
yeah,
typical.
If you've got a specific one, we'd be happy to work it for you.
I agree.
Okay. Is it a disability rating one?
It's in connection with that, yes.
Okay. We'll figure out who we can hook you up with, and we can probably hook you up with somebody today that's here.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Nothing, Ken. We were just watching you guys talk over there, and that's okay. Kidding. What else is going on? Yes, sir.
Congressman, I had a question about. I had two questions. I had a question about two pieces of legislation that you co-sponsored. My name is Sam Mitrovich. I've got 20 years of active duty service. I've served in virtually every conflict between Gulf War and Afghanistan. Currently, my disability rating is under 50%, so I think you can see where I'm going with this. Because I'm rated under 50%, my retirement pay is reduced by $1 per dollar amount for every dollar that I get in disability pay. You have co-sponsored both HR 303 and HR 333, which is designed to correct that. Because as it stands right now, only veterans that are rated over 50% can receive concurrent receipt.
Right.
My question to you is very simple. Will either of those bills pass out of committee to a vote?
How does it look for those bills going to work session?
Yes, sir.
What's our sense of that?
Well, one of them was over at HVAC, not HVAC, so that would be
Okay.
for the Armed Services Committee. The other one has joint referral.
So one of them, so as we run into sometimes with the disability stuff, you've got DOD jurisdiction as well as VA jurisdiction. So one of the bills, even though I co-sponsored it, is still in front of Buck McKeon's House Armed Services Committee. What we do regularly, though, is if we're on a bill, we go ahead and ping the committee in terms of when can we expect a hearing? Do we not expect a hearing? How does that work? I can tell you that time-wise, one of the biggest adjustments for me that I'm struggling with is sometimes paint drying seems like about 100 miles an hour compared to the pace back there. And so when you look at those and say, what are we doing? Actually, Veterans has been fairly active in terms of some of the stuff that we've gotten out recently. And I've got some examples here that I can give you in the way of an update. Miller of Florida, H.R. 21. This is House recently passed VA backlog legislation and other bills. Miller, Florida, H.R. 2189 establishes commission charged with examining root cause of disability claims backlog, providing solutions for it ending by 2015. 2148 from Flores of Texas establishes Economic Opportunity Administration within the VA, enabling the department better focus on veterans' transition to civilian life. Titus of Nevada requires VA Secretary to include an appeals form along with any benefits denial notification. H.R. 2111, Delaney, Maryland, extends Veterans Advisory Committee on Education through 2015. Other stuff like that. We passed stuff in the Milcon bill that talks about backlogs and an amendment that we put on the floor which tries to get personnel down to the offices as opposed to overtime. That's a different story in the Senate, but we got it out of the House. So if what I can do for you is Jason's got the two bill numbers. If you want to give us your contact information before you leave, we'll get back to you with specific reports on both of those in terms of what the prognosis is.
Okay, my concern is that these bills have been introduced in prior sessions, and they have not made it out of committee. So at this point, it starts to become a question of whether it's political theater or not, because these bills make it nowhere.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's a fair analysis. I can just tell you that if we're on them and we tell you we're going to work them, then we're going to work them, and ask those questions like when's it going to be heard, and if it's not going to be heard, why isn't it going to be heard? And for the ones that we introduce, we don't introduce a bill for political theater. If I introduce a bill on sage hens, it's because I'm trying to work it. You know, it's like I want a hearing, I want a markup. We introduced the amendment on the floor. We worked it. Amazingly enough, it passed.
You did co-sponsor one of these bills with the each other.
Yep. So we'll put them on the list to watch and start finding out where they're at.
Thank you for your response.
Now, let me give you the last half of that, though, because it kind of gets back to the paint drying thing, which is, this is the 113th Congress. So it started on January 1st of 2013, and it ends December 31st, 2014. So you and I may sit there and go, well, okay, the bill's introduced. When's it going to be heard? A few months. You know, in Nevada, we do it 120 days every other year. It's like boom, boom, boom. So that's kind of what we're used to. What people look at, a lot of people look at this and say, yeah, we're going to work on that this Congress. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is this Congress ends 14 months from now. And so you're sitting there going, hey, I've got these real life issues in terms of disability rating that affect the finances for how my program goes. So anyhow, but we'll get on it.
Well, in my defense, I'm a new transplant here. I lived in Norfolk about 3 months ago.
Okay.
So,
Well, you're probably the majority, so you don't have to have it in your defense. Don't worry about that. Most of the people here are from someplace else. But make sure we get your contact information so we can give you the prognosis on this.
absolutely.
And so we'll work through Jason, and also Ken Gray is our district guy here in Reno that's reason for living, not exclusively, but almost, is Veterans Affairs. He's an Air Force guy, though, so.
But we don't know that yet.
Didn't want you to hear that from somebody else. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
What else? What else is going on? Questions?
What about,
Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I went down the other day to the VA hospital, and I was being represented by AMVETS, but AMVETS is not going to be representing us anymore. And also, they messed up my paperwork, so I had to start all over. But now I got to start all over again because there's no AMVETS. This is going to be really a great deal. I mean, I've been fighting this thing since 1967 when I got out of the Army, and I was in Vietnam, 65, 66. And I just the last couple of years got some help. I'm down to 70. I'm up to 70% now, and I can't work anymore. You know, I'm so bad of shape, and now I'm fighting to have them redo my veterans. You know what I can get. I just want to get 100% pay because I can't work anymore. And now it's a big fight. I got to start all over again and go through because their book was written in 1947 that they used for this determining benefits, and been some modifications to it over the years. It's crazy. It's just a long, drawn-out process. It's a big bureaucracy. It looks like the health care bill when you look at that book they use.
Ouch. So do we have a rating problem or a?
I'm Kat Miller, Director for the Nevada Department of Veteran Services. AMVETS let us know a few days ago that they would be closing down shop there in the hospital. I'll give you my card before you leave tonight. We'll hook you up with an advocate. We're also, for everyone, so you're aware, we are working with the leadership at AMVETS to make sure that those that wish to transfer their power of attorneys over to us, we're more than happy to take them or find some other agency that would be willing to help.
I'm working through DAV now, and they say now I got to wait 3 weeks so they can pull up all and get all my files. So here I go 3 more weeks.
And we will have to get your files. If you're comfortable with DAV, I'll tell you they have some great advocates over there.
Yeah,
If you're not, we'll be glad to help you out too. And please take my card afterwards. If you're not satisfied, I think you will be with DAV. There's some, and AMVETS has some great reps too. I have a great deal of respect for them. But the reality is, yes, they have to make sure they have all their records. Last thing we want you to do is file a claim, and then it have to go back to the drawing board because all the evidence isn't there.
Yeah,
So we'll take care of you.
The last claim I filed through AMVETS, they filed it different. They read the doctor's diagnosis wrong, filed it wrong. So now it's kicked back. Now I got to start all over again.
I can't guarantee you the results, but I can guarantee you we have the best advocates in the state. So we will hook you up with somebody.
That's true.
So then is he headed back into your system, Ed?
AMVETS?
No, for evaluation of his disability?
It would depend what AMVETS sends us.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Miller's right, you know, they informed us about a week or so that they were moving out, and it's because of funding. They were funded from California, and the funding ran out to their thrift stores, I believe. But Ms. Miller's correct, is that she's taken over that portion of what you represent, 13 other organizations?
We currently represent 13 organizations, and but our training is, we train through not only American Legion, but the NAVSCO. We're certified by the VA General Counsel, and I've got some really fine officers. But again, so does DAV. So I'd like to talk with you to find out who's representing you right now. We'll make sure to get hooked up. Cool? All right.
Army person too.
I'm glad she persisted. Thank you.
Okay, so you're not going to leave until you guys hook up, right?
We got a card working our way around.
Okay.
Yeah, she get your card.
And I said please too, in case anybody's keeping track. Vicki.
He brought up about the current receipt. My husband was shot in Vietnam, almost died there, lost the use of a hand and so on. The Army rated him 100%. He was temporary 100% through the VA. If you go back to 1966, the retirement pay wasn't all that good for a POC. And so he took the 90% rating from the VA. He's now 100% unemployable. So 90%, and if you know how they do the VA evaluations, that's the most ridiculous math I've ever seen. But he's 90% service connected, 10% basically unemployable to get the 100% rating.
Yeah.
You know what his concurrent receipt amount is, and has been for quite a number of years?
What?
$10 a month.
That's a function of what?
The whole disability rating on the 90% versus IU, is that the question? And then the current receipt?
Yeah?
What are you asking? I mean, because concurrent receipt is based on military service, and if it's in
Special
combat.
compensation
Mhm.
due to his injuries.
Yeah.
The fact that when you serve your country, you're not allowed to pull your retirement and
Right.
your disability rating,
Mhm.
as a lot of government employees and so on are. So why did the Department of Defense even bother?
I couldn't
With
answer that.
$10 a month, what good does that do?
For
And if
disability.
HR 4646 goes through, we'll lose more than we gain off of that.
Yeah.
So what good is the concurrent receipt or special compensation for these veterans who have fought for everybody to have the rights, for our congressmen to have the ability to sit and represent us? If you're going to send $10 a month, 5 times we have sent the beneficiary information into DOD, and they still don't show it. So,
Right. Well, what I can do is, I'll have somebody call you tomorrow and explain how we administrate the benefits and what concurrent receipt is involved in that. But it's the law that, we're bound by, saying that this is your disability and this is how much we're going to not withhold from your military retire pay.
So that gets back into.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand where, we administer disability payments. And if you have disability retirement for the military service, we can't pay both. And that's just written in the law that way.
that's kind of, I'm a retired police officer, and I was a federal officer as well as a city officer. And it's kind of, I don't want to be rude, but it's BS.
It's,
If the law tells you got to put, as someone so nicely said here not too long ago, if the law requires you to make slaves out of people, are you going to do it? There's a lot of things the law says we're supposed to do.
I'm going to get you off the hook here.
we will get you contact information, explain how your benefits
I
are.
have very,
When you-
very well in.
Time out. When you get the information on that, also get a hold of Vicki Maltman. She's in my contacts, which you have access to, and give her the update on those 2 pieces of legislation. And if we need to fix them further. Okay? Okay. All right, I'm going to sit here and stare at everybody. What else is going on? Doesn't have to be veterans related.
Tell them about HR 4646.
Shoot.
This Obamacare is killing everybody. All you have to do is say to Obama, we'll vote for it. You take it. Everybody or nobody. In fact, he won't take it. He's been asked twice on TV that I know of. Maybe more. Why didn't somebody say that right to him? Like, the House of Representatives. Just flat out come right in front of TVs and say, we will vote for this if you take it and everybody else. And he won't do it.
Listen very carefully to how I respond to that. Because I'm not going to say I'm not going to say the word Democrat or Republican in this
I didn't
response.
say that either.
I know you didn't. But I will tell you that this issue, like some other ones that we can think about, education for one, healthcare has become so politicized that getting somebody to focus on the issue instead of what this side or what this side is saying politically is I mean, the frustration level, I don't have to tell anybody in this room, is off the charts. So I will just tell you what my defense mechanism is in situations like this. Find out everything you can about the law, be as deep as you can in the issue, and work the issue. That doesn't mean scream and yell that the other side sucks and that their law, whatever. It's like you guys are going to make your mind up on that, or in the process of doing that, as you are entitled to do. I will say this. The law was passed 3 years ago. And in the last 90 days, regardless of what your registration is, you've heard a lot of very high-pitched discussion. Why don't you leave it alone? It's the law. Okay? Well, I'll just tell you that I think one of the first laws was the Constitution. It's been amended 20-some-odd times. So the fact that something is passed, even a disability rating or blending things, doesn't mean that it's done. The legislative process is supposed to be ongoing. And the legislative process isn't perfect, which means, God forbid, sometimes you pass things that aren't a good idea. There's one of those amendments we repealed. Remember that one back there that had to do with prohibition?
1930?
Anyhow, so to sit there and say that anything is like, it was passed, it was done, leave it alone, I find an incredible thing to say. That's my personal opinion. The second thing I'll tell you is this. There's a word that's not used too much when you talk about things going on the East Coast anymore, and that's leadership. Okay? And that can apply to everybody back there, so I'm not picking on anybody. It's everybody. And I'm part of that. But when you sit here and think about the last 60 days, and you talk about things like shutdowns and debt limits and all that other sort of stuff, it's like, if you dust off your headline amnesia, there were some offers that went back and forth, said, okay, repeal it. Well, that's not going to happen. Although it may end up happening, but that wasn't going to happen 60 days ago. Okay, defund it. Well, you can't do that. Well, it's funny, it worked pretty good on Yucca Mountain, didn't it? Yeah. But that's not going to happen. Okay, delay the whole thing for a year. Leave it alone. Okay, delay the individual mandate for a year. Leave it alone. Now, I'm not telling you that was good stuff or bad stuff to do. I can just tell you there were 4 separate bills that went over from one house to the other that said, if you do that, we won't shut it down. And they were all rejected. Not voted on. Not have a hearing. Just like we're talking right now, you say, that's my idea, so I don't like that idea, forget that. That's it. So you don't know whether it's, I mean, I get the frustration. And right now, everybody's concentrating, all the national media is concentrating on the rollout. It's like, that's fine, concentrate on the rollout. You know, it's funny, it's a veterans town hall meeting here, but the guy over there from the hospital, and we've talked with some of the staff about this, it's like, you know what, the VA system, as this continues to roll out, like, his hospital may be the best looking show in town for some people that aren't there anymore. Because they're doing what human beings do. What's the benefits, what's the downside, blah, blah, blah. No thanks, I'm going there if I can get in. And we'll have bills on maybe changing the criteria for getting in. But I'll tell you this, since you brought it up. Everybody's screaming and yelling about the rollout. Well, after the rollout, you're going to get to the substance of the bill. And I'm just telling you the facts available are ones where you sit there and you go, you know what? Do we need health care reform in this country? Yeah. Was this a strong effort? I'll let you be the judge. But so far, there's a lot to be concerned about. Now that's as nicely as I can say it, because I don't want to politicize this about health care. All I would encourage you to do is continue to do your homework, see how it works on your individual bases, and then, you know what? I'll tell you where I think it's going to end. I think it's going to end with everybody in Washington being told to get out. And you know what, if that's what it takes to get it started, and I'm not talking about one side or the other, it's like, because, and I hope I'm wrong, but it's a colossal failure, potentially. And it's not going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, it's a colossal failure, and you're okay, and the rest of you, it's like, you know what, the ultimate group sport will be, hey, this work is so awful that we need a whole new team. And you know, if it comes to that, it gets it going the right direction, then good.
Two more things.
Two? All right.
All right. One, when the thing that where they froze all the government things and the veterans that got killed in Afghanistan, and the House passed the bill 425 tonight. Mr. Harry Reid held it up. If I'm not mistaken, I saw it on the news. Maybe it's not true, but he would not take it. He would not pass it because he wanted the Obamacare to be put in session. He held it up. He effed those veterans that died. That was wrong.
Well,
Shouldn't they use them as a political tool?
I agree. What's the second one?
The second one is the 150th anniversary of Gettysburg. I've been there. Great place, a lot of memories. And Mr. Obama was invited to attend the 150th anniversary of the dedication. He refused.
I didn't know that.
That was on the news. That may not be true.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, what? An insult?
We're the news people here. Yeah, it's on the news. I'll just tell you this, because there are strong feelings on all sides of the shutdown. I don't think anybody woke up and decided one morning, hey, let's shut the government down. Those 4 bills that we talked about, here, we won't shut it down if you do this, or that, and some other things. Medical device tax, all that other sort of stuff was met with no response, other than no, not a hearing, not a referral. And I'll just, listen, we're Nevadans, nobody tells us what to think, we make up our own minds. So here's some facts for you to make up your own mind. And one of those is this. You got the bill number right and you got the vote right. It was overwhelmingly bipartisan, because we had funded forward the hospital operations of VA, but we hadn't some of the claims and the disability stuff. So it's like, here it is, take care of those folks. Bipartisan, 420 some odd votes in the House. Okay?
425.
You talk about gridlock, it's like, hey, they all agreed on that. Went to the north side of the building, vapor lock. Okay? Now, and you say, nope, we're not doing anything until you open up the whole government. Really? I got to fully fund the IRS in order to take care of veterans? Really? I got to fully fund the Department of Labor in order to take care of veterans? I'll just leave it at that.
That's why they use the veterans.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll tell you what we're trying to do, though. Here's something that you can bang people on. So we need to fully fund all those operations.
That's correct.
So that if there is a next time, which I hope there is not, but if there is a next time, it's like nobody's talking about veterans anything, because it's this much of the budget. So you get into those facts, and it's like, really? And I'll just leave it at that. But I'll tell you, there's great interest on the committee on both sides of the aisle in funding forward even the claims operation and everything, so that if something like that happens again, it's not, well, let's go make an example out of the folks who served the country. And it's like, we've got legislation to that effect, so hopefully that's one of the things that will come through in the 114th Congress. Yes, sir.
So
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, sir. I'm my name's Boone Cole. I was in Iraq in 2005. I'm 100% disabled. The question I have, I do have a lot of warfighters, talk to a lot of warfighters, and one of the emerging issues right now that a lot of guys are talking about that's I'm not hearing a lot coming back about it is the methylpone issue. It's an anti-malaria pill that we're given when we're overseas. Much of it was not documented on medical records. The FDA has come out within the last couple months and said this drug can cause permanent psychological and neurological damage. Permanent. Doctors are coming out saying that it's a suicide pill. Truly, actually promotes suicide. Our suicide rate right now is 22 a day, 23 a day, including bringing the active duty. And that's only 8 states reporting. That number can be 4 or 5 times higher. and people are pointing at mefloquine, but I'm not seeing the response from our government to deal with it, to handle it. I mean, I understand they're doing things at the War-Related Injury and Illness Center, but I'm not seeing the, at least getting the word out. I mean, we're getting the word out to ourselves, but as far as people taking action, and our Vietnam brothers over here and sisters can testify to all these years that, you know, Agent Orange was never acknowledged, this was not acknowledged, we didn't acknowledge. This is the new Agent Orange. Mefloquine is the new Agent Orange, and it's killing a lot of people. What say you, sir? Is anything being done that we need to know about?
Is that on your street, any, in terms of treatment or anything else like that?
Yeah.
You guys haven't heard about it?
No, it's not a commonly described or written about thing in the medical journals yet. It may be coming, but I haven't seen it.
Any rumblings at the committee level about that? You guys hear about it at all? I'll tell you, it's what you just said is new to me.
I can talk about it all day long. I have several guests on my show, and a lot of people talking about it. And it seems to be that cutoff. What makes these warfighters different than previous era warfighters? This is the mefloquine cutoff. It started really being pushed out during Somalia, and ever since then, it removes your ability or desire for self-preservation.
Well, I'll tell you what we can do is let's get your information in a communication to the Secretary's office, unless somebody's got a better idea, and say, hey, what's going on with this? This has come up in a town hall meeting. Is there anything going on regionally? Is there anything going on nationally? How are we dealing with this, or are we not dealing with it? And if we're not, why not? And put you as a point of contact for...
More than happy.
Okay.
More than happy.
Good. Good. You haven't heard anything about it, have you, Glenn?
I have.
Yeah. Okay. Why haven't you been telling me?
No,
We'll talk about that later.
It's just been on the 1-to-1, so.
Okay. All right, well, let's get it on the screen. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing. My son couldn't be here. He's a Gulf War vet. He's trying to fight for benefits, the whole thing. And he wanted me to ask you that why is the people in Washington fighting so much for 12 million illegal aliens' rights, giving them all the benefits, and we can't get them? That's what he wants to know.
Well, I'd love to sit down and talk with him about what is or isn't being done about them, comparatively speaking. But I can tell you there isn't a department of, there is not a department of illegal aliens that has a budget of X million dollars a year with a bunch of people like that sitting over there. And I'm not trying to be flip.
High school, free college in California now? Oh my gosh. You're
Well,
getting so many benefits that we can't get.
Check your zip code because it's Nevada, and thank God it's not California.
Okay.
I get, but listen, if you want to sit down and chat about it, that's fine. I'd be happy to. And I'll just tell you this: I think I hope, although we'll look at it, I hope when you look at what the federal government's doing as far as for the VA and for people, while it's not enough, is far and above in terms of commitment to at least the ideal, is much higher than what's going on with illegal immigration in this country.
No.
And let me tell you this, that's another issue. When you talk about health care, it's like, listen, there are solutions to the immigration problem, but until you get away from the politics, you know, it's like something, I sit on the subcommittee and the committee that has primary jurisdiction. And you know what? We've had 14 hearings now on immigration. You know, ag workers, dreamers, tech workers, visa system, border, all that stuff. And you know what nobody has said in any of those? And by the way, the panels are not, hey, I'm just going to have all my friends come in and testify. Nobody said, hey, it's working fine, leave it alone. And so it's like the challenge to us, and you can hear the frustration in my voice is, you know that old saying, lead, follow, or get out of the way? It's like you need to do something on that issue, like you do some of these other issues. And as long as you continue to do nothing, the people who talk, regardless of what they're saying, will occupy all the space, and you'll continue to have no solution to the problem.
We had a good program. When I was young, I'm originally from Arizona. I worked on the ranch. We had what they call the Bracero program. They brought men in, they bussed them up from the border safely, so they didn't cross the desert and die. They paid them a decent wage, they had to give them housing when the crops were all done and everything back. They went back to Mexico glad because they had money to live the rest of the year. And then, what's his face over there, was the union boss for the people that came over, what was his name? Cesar Chavez, yeah, that guy. He threw a fit, so they kicked out the Bracero program. But it worked because they couldn't bring their families, but they came here to work. And then they went home. Because of one union guy and his hacks.
Ag workers is an area where we need to do something.
Yeah.
Along with the others.
And it worked great. Man, those guys worked and they made money.
I'll tell you what, the Senate bill did a good start on it, although we have in the House also, worked on a bill that's ag workers, and it's like, along with the other issues, but it's like in order for you to be able to form an opinion, we need to, in my humble opinion, produce something. Because producing nothing allows everybody to say whatever they want, and you got nothing. It's kind of like your question on when these bills going to move. Because until something moves, I have nothing to judge you by except your organization has produced nothing. So, yes.
Hi, Congressman Mark Amodei. I'm doing wonderful. I want really to thank you when you took the veterans to DC and you make them to be very respectful and a lot of dignity. You're really doing a great job about that. Also, I want to congratulate you that you're a so open person that you have this kind of forums that we can talk about it and that you're doing the best you can for immigration. I just want to clarify, and nobody is illegal. People don't have documents just because we have dignity. And actually, a teacher let me borrow a documentary they call La Cosecha, how the migrant workers, actually, they born here and they move to places. Oh my God, the conditions of living of the people, because the economy is bad, is real bad. So let's touch our hearts and see human beings, and I really like you the way you've been so open, helping veterans, because thanks to all the veterans who are doing what they're doing for us, we have this great country. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I mean, listen, I'm going to say something everybody in the room knows, and might as well say it so nobody's wondering. First of all, the reason you have quarterly meetings like this one, now let's face it, nobody thinks veterans are a group that comes in and they bring a bunch of flowers for you, and would you like some milk and cookies during the meeting, that sort of stuff. But it's like, we don't want to be in a position where you had to come find us. I mean, you will still come find us once a quarter doesn't do it, but it's like we want to come find you. And at this particular point in time in our history, while you may be angry at VA for something now and then, I can assure you, when you're part of an organization who on a good day's approval rating is the high single digits, it's a tough time to be in the business. But yeah, you guys are going high single digits, nothing. You guys are getting ready to slip off into the red numbers. But I can tell you this, many of these issues have gone unaddressed for so long that there is no political sweet spot. You see, how can you sit there? It's like, listen, all I can do, and if there's somebody's got a better idea, it's like, get as deep in the issue as I can, be open for input, which most of the time is very fair and very accurate, and do what you think is the right thing for the issue. The issue. So when you talk about the issues for mixing federal retirement and military disability, or the issues regarding what you're going to do about claims backlog, or the issues on immigration, the issues on health care, all that stuff, it's like, listen, I got news for you. Unless I'm missing it, there's not something where I come back and say, we do this, this, and this, and you guys are all going to think I'm cool and that Congress is a great thing. You're not. Hopefully, you can come back and say, listen, here are the facts that were important to me. Here's the decision that I made based on those facts. You may still disagree with me, but hopefully, the win for me is this guy's at least trying to work the issue, and he's doing what he thinks right in the issue. I think he's wrong, but he's not out there checking the windsock for which way this team or that color is going and trying to work those, because it is, and I'm not a drama guy, I'm sick of the drama out of DC. I got to tell you, I'm sick of the drama. I don't care what it is, whether it's like cut the drama and go work the issue. And you know what? One of the neat things about being in the House of Representatives, you got a personnel session every 24 months. And so it's like, you know, you go do what you think's the right thing, and if people say that isn't our deal anymore, then I'll accept that. But in order to be able to accept it, I think you've got to, and I would just suggest that when you're thinking about it, it's like you insist that your people work the issues. It doesn't matter what you're registered as, work the issue. And if you work the issue, they're solvable. Healthcare's solvable. Veterans issues, I will say this about the Veterans Committee, though. And I sit on some committees that are, some people might call them kind of partisan. I will say this about the Veterans Affairs Committee. Chairman Miller, ranking member from Massachusetts, Michoud, who I was very proud of. The last hearing, I stopped him after, and he doesn't know me. And their comments about when Secretary Sinchaki was in front of the committee and talking about shutdown stuff, and Michoud goes, I'm not sure whether it's this or that, and frankly, I don't care. Well, it's the Republicans' fault, and that was the Democrats' fault. I don't care. I care about the issue. The Veterans Affairs Committee has done a very good job of working veterans issues and not working as Republicans and Democrats. And we've got the ranking minority member staff here also. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's always nice to go into veterans and go, okay, how do we get there? How do we try to get the issue squared away and not have to worry about being sniped for being a bad donkey or a bad elephant? So, and I don't mean that to be, you know, I mean, for most of the time, the definition of bipartisan in D.C. now is do what the other side says. So anyhow, I'll just say that's what I'm going to continue to do. We'll continue to get deep in the issue, do what we think's right, be able to explain that action to you, so that you can then make up your mind whether you think that was a good thing to do or not. Who else? Yes, there he is.
The notes concerning this meeting here talk about the need for the above-mentioned legislation is underscored last week because the VA has missed in 2013 processing goals of nearly 100,000 claims. And then they go on to say here that creating a task force of private industry leaders may be something to consider. I'm wondering if people in Washington are any close to the possibility of looking at this kind of relationship between private industry and the concept of public-private partnerships that might be utilized to improve the operating process of these administrations.
Well, if you're talking about the claims backlog, I think that's where we started out. Yeah. You know, the issue is claims processing. How do you process the claims in a timely manner and the claims that you have in a timely manner? And in the context of the VA, when you go back and change some of those issues in terms of, give me the buzzwords for the Willie that were the transformation. The Agent Orange related stuff.
Agent Orange and the Niemer decision.
Yeah, Niemer and that stuff. What you do when you have a policy change says, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to look at those issues. We have criteria that we looked at before, and we've changed those criteria. So now that you've changed them, you got to go back and look at those folks. And guess what? There were a lot. So now you have a claims universe that's X thousand. And now when you go back and look at, because you've changed your criteria for these, X thousand just grew exponentially 1 or 2. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm saying that's what happened. So now we're through. We're pretty much through that. If my ears were open. And so it's okay. Now get into a rhythm where stuff doesn't get out beyond a year, and whatever the standard processing time is. Those sorts of things in claims processing. Okay. Now that we're at that point in time, I mean, I'm one of the guys who, quite frankly, disagree with the VA and said, I think you ought to hire more people for your offices and not do this overtime thing. Okay? We got a majority of the House of Representatives to agree with that. Stay tuned. We'll see what the Senate thinks about it. But I will say this. the targets that have been represented to us in terms of getting rid of that backlog, not just in Reno, but I mean, we're sitting in Washoe County, so, but other places in the nation. It's like, I'm looking at that going, they might be meeting their mission. They might be getting through that. And so if they are, there's some credibility to getting through that. Now, going forward, obviously one of the oversight functions is, and we had a discussion about some of this today in a meeting this morning, is are you going to be making mission, if you're getting 600 claims a month in Reno, how many claims are you processing in Reno? Because it probably should be pretty close to 600, so you can keep that going. So I will tell you, in my mind, the jury is still out, which doesn't mean it's made up. It's like, well, you know what? We'll try it your way. I wasn't pleased with things the first 18 months, but the last 8 months, it's like, okay, there's been enough movements where it's like, let's see how it goes. But obviously, it's something that we're very sensitized to here in Nevada. And it's something we're sensitized to in a lot of districts throughout the nation, because there are, processing time issues, which also include the quality control and all the other stuff that goes in. I can tell you this, I think that significant progress has been made, and that everybody's watching how claims are going in the regional offices in terms of times, quality, all that other sort of stuff. Well, and Vic says, well, this was the office with the worst backlog. You don't need to tell me. I'm the guy who represents the area. But I will say, in your defense, I don't know what the latest stuff is, and I hope all of them are down. But we're a long ways from where we were 14 months ago. So, got any wood up here? Knock on plastic wood. But anyhow, that's something that's near the top of the screen instead. And actually, it's part of the reason why that these folks from the committee are in Nevada this week, these few days. They're going down to Las Vegas tomorrow, and they won't have near as much fun as they had here in Reno. Don't tell Congresswoman Titus I said that.
I would.
Hey, Mark?
Yes.
What do you think about shutting down the memorials back there in Washington during?
The question is shutting down the memorials. I'll just tell you this. Nobody woke up one day and said, shut the government down to show that you can, or, the issue was in my mind, it's like, listen, we talk about VA, you talk about health care, you talk about defense. The whole discretionary part of the budget for the federal government is about 33%. Now, I got to tell you, I didn't connect these two dots until about 6 weeks ago. Because it's like, okay, discretionary part of the budget is 33%, we're borrowing 40+%, blah, 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 and you sit there and 6 weeks ago I go, every single penny that the federal government spends on stuff that is not Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, or interest on the debt is borrowed. I mean, the equivalent. Third of the budget, four-tenths of the budget is borrowed. And you sit there and go, listen, shutting the government down is not the answer. You're not going to get things back into balance in a year, but you've got to start. And so those of us that felt strongly about that, we're saying, listen, we need to go to the hospital, and I'd like to go to the hospital standing up and sit down at admissions on my own instead of through the emergency room laid out in a fiscal sense. And so you've got to make this change. And you may say, oh, I don't agree with that. The debt doesn't matter, 17 trillion, 40% of your budget is borrowed. It's like, you know what, I think it means a lot. And if you think that's hokey or hooey, then you know what, I'm not your guy. I just think that's unsustainable ultimately. And so when you get to the point where you say, hey, listen, we need to do something to get this trajectory back online where even on some of the plans, it's 40 years to pay off. If nothing changes, it's 40 years to pay off $17 trillion. If the economy gets better, it's less. If it gets worse, it's more. I just think it's a fundamental thing. So when you say, okay, the government shut down, and you go, Okay, well, let's look at how much money you have and what's really funded and what's not. I mean, there's a Moody's article on the debt that says you got plenty of income to pay the debt, the interest on the debt. And you can pay Social Security. We passed bills out of House that said, pay the interest on the debt, pay Social Security, pay veterans, pay blah, blah. Went nowhere. Now, I'm not saying it's because we did it, it's right. It's like, well, Senator, if you got a better idea, then please send it back.
Of course, that's what they say about you.
No, we sent one over.
No.
I mean, you've got me on votes to say I can judge this guy by what he voted for, and you should. And guess what? You're going to disagree with something. But you sit there and you go, okay, we're going to close down open air memorials. We're going to call people on grazing allotments in Nevada before we turn the lights out. And those land management agencies say, get your cows off the allotment. We're closed down, but you can't call me and ask any questions. See you later. Bye. And I'm just, you know what? Everybody forms their own opinions, but I sit there and go, really? So your response to how are we going to deal with the underlying issue is to go politically and say, guess what? You can't go see your memorial, even though it's open. Your memorial, open air, 24/7. Can't go there. It's like, wow. There's a message there. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's a message there, and I would suggest to you that it's not about the issue. It's about the politics. Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you for helping get the public lands issue back up on the board. And I feel like maybe if we could get our public lands back and we got the money coming into the state, that we'd be able to really help like the veterans problems and all that sort of thing. At least we could take care of our veterans that are in the state. And I feel real strongly about that. I think there's a lot of things we could do if we had more back.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's not news to anybody here that the state is, I don't know what the exact number is, 84, 85, 86% owned by the federal government. And so you say, well, when you talk about things like economic development, private sector commerce, and by the way, they're not exclusive. If you work in the public sector, then your source of funding is tax revenue from the private sector. And so as a public sector guy at the moment, it's like you want the private sector to be doing well. Because when they do well, they do things like hire people, pay taxes, buy supplies, do consult, all that stuff that generates commerce and revenue. And so you say in the case of Nevada, you're sitting there going, listen, it's 86%. If I got somebody, and by the way, agriculture in the state, many of you men, is one of the top 10 industries. You know, cow-calf, there's only about a dozen sheep folks left. They're hanging on. Hay, alfalfa, it's in the top 10 industries in the state. They don't scream it from the rooftops. But it's like, we need them to do well. They are one of those industries that is a bellwether of how our economy goes. The resort industry, manufacturing, real estate, mining, all that stuff. You need them to do well. So when you talk about public lands issues, and this is another one of those that gets into the politics rather than the issue. It's like nobody's in favor of ruining the resource. The people who run cows on allotments in Nevada don't make money if they basically graze it down to dirt and there's nothing for their cows to eat because they sell them by the pound. I mean, come on. But the people who are in the mining business don't make money mining because they've ruined their last mine site and it's now a Superfund site. And so they're not going to ever get another permit in Nevada again. The idea is to keep doing what you're doing so that you can, A, pay those wages, pay those taxes, create those jobs, make that money, and everybody's boat goes up in a rising tide. So, I mean, we're hopeful we've got some public land stuff coming out of a markup here next week or the week after. That'll do some significant things for communities in northern Nevada, but there's also a companion bill for southern Nevada that does some stuff that needs to be done down there in a public land sense. And so we're hopeful that that'll keep moving. I'm spending tomorrow speaking with some of the BLM folks. We're going out and talking with a lot of the public lands folks. So thanks for paying attention. And whoever was laughed up here, the reference to the Sage Inn, obviously that's something we're working on.
Yeah, $7 million.
And by the way, it isn't Nevada, and it's not a sage grouse, okay? It's Nevada and sage hens. Now, that's what we've called them. Even the road to California, they got the Californians, for God's sakes, got it right on 395. It's not Sage Grouse Summit, it's Sage Hen Summit. So please go forth from this meeting and feel free to correct all the grousers of the world. Yeah. Yes, sir.
This may not be a question for you, Congressman, but, you know, with the improvements that, I'm good. With the improvements that the VA is making in the information technology field, since these guys are here, I got a question basically for you guys. I've been on the e-benefits website. My full-time job, I make sure the soldiers that I work with every day understand the benefits they get. The best thing that I've seen lately going on the e-benefits website is I can follow my claim and the status. I've done that for a lot of people so far, and it's better. It doesn't have you guys get a lot of phone calls. You're able to get that, so that's pretty good. So the question that I have is the VA ID card ever going to go to a CAC ID card like the military uses and DoD uses? And the other one is, are we going to open up more computer workstations in not just our regional areas, but in the rural areas also, so these guys can access that information?
Hey, quit pointing fingers at each other. Somebody step into the breach.
Well, we don't issue cards, so I was looking at him. But the e-benefits, thanks for the compliments on that. It's one of those programs that we started because we wanted to get the information out there. And I always describe e-benefits as like the old banking online service, you know, where, you know, when you first got there, you had to go to the bank to get a disc, put it on your machine and everything else. And then when you finally open it up after 20 minutes because you were dialing in, you can see your balance. And that's all you could do. And that's where e-benefits started at. Now that even my MA here just had a child last month, and he went on e-benefits and put that dependent on, and he saw the benefit within 7 days. So we're making strides on it. I'm glad to hear it. And as far as the accessibility to computers, even in my office, I have, well, both locations in Las Vegas and here in Reno, I have 2 computers there. And when somebody comes up and asks, you know, about a benefit or status of claims, my intake specialists say, have you tried any benefits? And we try signing them up right there and show them the functionalities of that. And I'm going to start another program probably in a month or so, is actually have my change manager go through the lines and saying, like the old ATMs, you know, when you were waiting in line for your deposit or whatever, they'd have bank tellers come and say, have you tried the ATM machine? So I'm going to try that as far as getting people to get comfortable with the system. And as more people get more and more comfortable with it, the more functionalities will be added to it. The next question is more difficult.
Okay. We actually have something similar within the VHA healthcare systems called My Healthy Vet. You may have heard about it. You can actually use it from your own personal computer, as long as you meet the certain criteria for, you know, secure access, that kind of thing. We do classes just about every week now at the hospital, and I think we hold them sometimes out at the C-Box as well on how to enroll into that program and how to use it from your own personal computer. You could do some of the similar things that the eBenefits does, is that you can now check your lab reports. You can look at your diagnostic stuff. You don't have to wait for your next appointment to hear that. You could schedule your appointments. You can change your appointment schedule that you already have. You can reorder your pharmacy prescriptions. There's a lot of great things that you can do from that program. The challenge is getting in, you know, signed up for it and getting trained for it. And we actually have a My Healthy Vet coordinator at the hospital who could schedule you for a class if you want to learn how to use that from your own personal computer. I can give you my card. Her name is Patty Beck Weaver, and she'd be happy to schedule anybody you want for those classes. I believe she's going to start doing outreach and going out to the community-based outpatient clinics that we currently have on outreach missions. So with that specific thing in mind, is to enroll our rural veterans, because we do realize it is a burden to travel in great distances to Reno to check on things like your pharmacy. If you could do that from the comfort of your own home online, or even just send a secure message to your primary care team and say, hey, look, I was just curious, I don't remember what my last blood pressure reading was. Can you pull that up for me? Those are the kind of things you can do with the technology that we have that also further enhances, say, things like your telemedicine experience that we can do, where you could do the remote appointments face-to-face with your doctor from Fallon and Auburn and Susanville and the like. So does that answer your question? Okay. You also had a question about the ID cards. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Dr. Bryan, Chief of Staff at the hospital, for those of you who don't know me, but secure messaging is another electronic communication tool that allows you to email your provider or your team. We call them a PAC team now. And we can internally set the incoming messages up in a way that sort of triages them. Say it goes to the RN or the doctor, depending on the types of messages. So we try to encourage people to do that as well, because that could save a whole face-to-face visit from a great distance. So, and we do have telehealth capability in all our CBOCs. So for those of you who are way out there, we can do mental health and a lot of subspecialty care now through that, and we keep expanding something every day. Just signed an agreement with San Francisco so we can do plastic surgery. So we can do consultations from remote distances for things like that with our level 1 facility in San Francisco. So there's lots of opportunity out there, and we're trying to get that out. And yes, Patty is going out, just signed off on a remote access, so she can go out on a campaign and try to sign people up at the different sites. So we will be reaching out. But if you spread the message for us, please. And if you want to come to the hospital, if you're locally, we have a whole perk room that has computers. We will sign you up right there on the spot, teach you how to use it, and talk to you about the capabilities.
Call a meeting where you have interested veterans who want to know about that program, who have never used it and want to enroll. You call the meeting, I'll bring the experts to that place, like Patty, and we can get you trained on the spot there and get you vested and enrolled. The only caveat is you have to be enrolled, vested in our medical care system first in order to use that program. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So your question on the ID cards, will they ever go to like the military uses CAT cards, or we use like the PIV cards here? I doubt you'll ever see that for medical care, the ID cards that you get that denote whether you're a veteran or not enrolled in VA healthcare system. It's not designed to be a form of ID identifying you as a veteran, okay? It's designed for our system, for us to show that you're enrolled in our care system, that we can run that and identify you by picture, okay, that you're enrolled. You don't want to have to use this as an ID card because God forbid you ever lost this. Somebody else could use it, okay? Trust me, they put the fear of God in us on don't lose your VIV card, okay? However, I'm going to pass the mic to Kat because the state of Nevada is doing something really wonderful to help you with showing that you are a veteran, so.
Thank you, Darren. I don't know how many calls a day I get from people thinking I'm the VA. I'm not the VA. I'm proud to stand next to them. They've done tremendous work. I know there's a lot to be done, but it's not just on the VA, it's on our Congress and our nation to determine what the appropriate mix of benefits are. But I will say this, our legislature during the past session passed a piece of legislation that allows veterans to self-identify when you get your driver's license at the DMV. There's a box you can check that says I'm a veteran. This is not intended for Big Brother to, follow you around, but it does two things. One, it lets us know where veterans are so we can push assets to veterans, rural veterans, et cetera, across the state. And it allows you to have a piece of identification that says, I'm a vet. Now, will it work at Lowe's? Maybe not. Their policy may be you have to be this 10% disabled vet. Will it work at Denny's? I don't know. But we get calls from local businesses and corporations that say, we'd like to know if somebody's a vet because we have an offering for them. So at least this will put on your driver's license, and I'm not saying that police officer that pulls you over will make a difference, because I just got a damn ticket the day before yesterday. But I will say, let's not go into that. If there's any police officers here, former police officers, we can talk afterwards. But I will say that our veterans have been asking for a long time for a way that they can identify themselves with state identification as a veteran. The DMV is tooling up. They just asked for the language. I expect it will be in the next couple of weeks. We'll put out a big campaign. You'll be able to see it, to know when you can go in and request your driver's license to indicate you're a veteran. Ma'am, you had a question?
I'm the one that brought that bill to fruition.
Thank you.
I'm the one that went to Don Gustafson and Greg Brower.
Yep, both of them were great
lobbied
sponsors.
them about 2 years ago at a Christmas party. Had to gather all the information to show that other states were doing it, give them the reasons why I wanted it done.
Yep.
One of the big things they seemed to miss, though, was putting veteran on a driver's license if there is a problem being in the law enforcement background before PTSD was recognized. But if they have a problem, and now that we have a veterans court up here and so on, there is a chance that they could understand that that is a veteran, they could possibly have PTSD. And yes, it gets you your free dinner on Veterans Day.
Well, it's more than that, too. There's education opportunities.
That's right.
There's something the Department of Defense called the Sea of Goodwill. Our biggest problem isn't coming up with new benefits. Our biggest problem is connecting beneficiaries with veterans. Delivery of services. And I want to make a quick plug for our new network, the Green Zone Green Zone Network. Yes, please just type in Green Zone Network Nevada. This is not about clean light bulbs or how to recycle. If you're somebody that has something you'd like to offer to a vet, or if you're a vet or a family member or survivor who'd like to learn some more, it's only just getting off the ground, but it's Facebook for Vets. We really would like everybody to join the conversation. Until we get 10,000, 20,000 people on there, it's not going to be what we want it to be. Be patient with it, sign up for it, please do that. It will make a great deal of difference. And I did want to say one thing on the outreach to rural vets. One of the things our service officers, we have a rural outreach with our veteran service officers. They're taking extra computers with them to help sign people up for My Healthy Vet and e-benefits. Unfortunately, some of these places we go, you can't get very good connection. But we do offer for any groups that like to go out with us. We always like to have an extra partner in case we get a flat or get stuck in Mina. And to the VA, we've reached out for them too. We always have a seat for folks that would like to go out and be part of it. So if you're part of a veteran service organization or any outreach group that would like to join in, please feel free to give us a call. We're at the Nevada Department of Veteran Services. We're online. And I'm here too, so you can beat up me afterwards. Who wants this mic? I'm done.
When you get stuck in minor also?
One ticket in my whole entire life, and it's coming from Carson City to Reno. I don't know what I'm
Yes, Congressman. I'm in the middle of 46. And this has a lot to do with it. This is your district, our Washoe County Schools, and we are going to need your help with this commission that we are thinking might not pass their portion of 46. And so all of these things, education is pretty much the bottom line to all of the things we've been talking about here today, yesterday, last week. If we can get our schools, we're so far last, it's unreal with the numbers. And I know the flyby numbers right now that Pedro's putting out. But bottom line is that if we can get our educational system working, 46 is the start. And then maybe we can start bringing up Clark County. Those are things that are the basis of all these issues that we're talking about. We don't have to cut into mining. We have to talk to our unions, teachers' unions. There are things that this is your district, and the college students, the immigrants, they're not able. They can go to college, but just like we said, they can't even graduate or be effective. Can't go into the military. There are things that we need to take care of here in the north, and this is our time to do it. And it's your watch. So
I'll tell you what, education is one of those issues where
issue.
All it takes is, well, since it's my turn, let me pick my words. I didn't pick yours for you.
Go ahead.
I'm done. It's one of those issues where all it takes is not a large group of people to get in the room and talk about the issues. Not talk about my agenda, not talk about your agenda, not talk about say, okay, The idea is to produce the best quality education experience for grade school, middle school, high school, higher education, technical, whatever it is. And they're imminently, I think, solvable. So, I mean, I accept your challenge. Actually, something we should probably do before the end of the year, sit down with Pedro and go, okay, we've tried to pattern our efforts after pushing as many resources to the state and district level as possible because of the underlying belief that the Washoe County School District knows better how to spend its resources than somebody 2,500 miles away. No disrespect to those people in the LBJ building. It's just that, you know what? It's kind of like with committee staffers here. There's no substitute for them being on the ground, looking into the eyes of the folks who are administering these programs, seeing what's going on here, seeing what's going on there, eyes on. And so, I mean, we'll continue to do that, but I accept the challenge and sit down with Pedro and some of the other, actually we sat down with some of the rural superintendents too to say, okay, what's the worst, I know you find this hard to believe, what's the worst thing the federal government's doing to you in education? And it's like, I got screamed at, but anyhow. Okay, give me the top 5. So anyhow, you know, I mean, we'll pick that.
Because this is a local situation that I've been there as a president lobbyist, and I've been there since day one. Yeah. It's just makes sense to get the capital. We don't even have to pass one or either of the budgets for the monetary fiscal.
Well,
we can just pass the thing and do all that later.
Let me give you an example. What was the bill? It was Virginia Fox's bill. It took 75 different programs. And I don't know what the number was for them. We didn't take a penny away from them. It was the same amount of money, but said, we don't need to administer this money through 75 different frameworks. We're cutting those frameworks down to 30 or something like that. Quit looking at me blank, Jason. You're supposed to make a name up. Make a number up. Anyhow. So anyhow, it's like, here it is, same funding. But instead of doing it 75 administrative silos, we're doing it 35 or whatever it was. Here you go. Passed. And listen, please don't leave the room and say, because it passed the House, shame on everybody who didn't agree with it. The legislative process means, what's your idea on the other side? But the issue remains. And so you sit there and go, okay, here's our idea. It's like, and you just go, it's like, well, paint's drying pretty fast today. So anyhow, but listen, I say that not to say it's like, hey, you know what, as long as I have the responsibility, I'm swinging the bat as hard as I can. So we'll pick that bat up and figure out how we swing it.
You've got my name and number.
Yep. Bring the eggnog. Somebody else, yes.
Hi, Mark. My name is Anne Marie Holly, and I want to thank you tonight for coming. I'm kind of disappointed in the size of the crowd. I'm an Army mother and a very proud Navy daughter. My father's since deceased. But I'm stunned as an Army mother because I feel like there should be a couple thousand people here. When my son went to Afghanistan, there were over 1,000 people at the GSR. And I feel like the bridge between two generations. I have friends here, and I see a generation. Our World War II veterans are dying at a rate of 2,000 a day, and we have our Korean vets that are now in their 80s, and our Vietnam vets, and they were promised benefits that have since declined, and I'm worried about the future for my son's generation when we had 3,700 people in Nevada go to war, and in March, I went to the Danville Day at the governor and the legislative day in Carson City, and there were 57 Nevadans that have died in this recent conflict. And I'm just wondering, as a congressman, how often are you briefed by the various armed forces committees as to the status of the war? When are we coming home from Afghanistan? I still get emails daily with pictures of people that are being wounded and dying, and it breaks my heart. We're never going to have 1 million people go to Washington and march to advocate when less than 1% of Americans even sacrifice on a family level. I have one son. He went to war by his own choice. I could have stopped him from doing that. I don't see 1 million of my colleagues going to Washington to say, bring our troops home. When I went to Washington for my career 8 years ago, the Army budget was $80 billion. Now our deficit is just beyond comprehension. And I'm wondering, what do you hear on a daily basis? What is the political pressure to make Obama bring our troops home and start rebuilding Iraq to produce oil? I mean, we shouldn't be dying, and our bases have closed in 20 years. We're the front line to the Pacific Ocean now. And I also, in addition to that, I want to know how often you're briefed on, and what is the political effort by Congress and the Senate to end the war? And then, do you also support, ever since Bill Clinton stopped the draft, because we now have a declining, there's effort to reduce the forces, which I think is a risk to America, would you support reinstating the draft so that we can put back the eroding patriotism and be ready in the event of other conflicts around the world? Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 there, but you're going to remind me if I miss them. First of all, let me give you this by way of background. I served 4 years on active duty, but it was not during a time like this. I don't say it very much because, you know, I spent most of my time at Fort Hood, Texas, in the 3 Corps headquarters as a JAG officer. So that makes me not able to carry the briefcase of you folks in here. But the thing I'm proudest of is my oldest daughter spent 4 years on active duty in the Navy, went on 2 Westpacks, 3 Sea Service ribbons. You know, she earned her living for 4 years as a ship driver in the Navy. And so I'm proud of her, like you said, all her own decision, that sort of stuff. So I've got skin in the game in terms of veterans issues, not my skin, but knew what it was like to be a parent, put them on the plane where they were flying to Detroit, to Amsterdam, to Abu Dhabi, to report to the USS Peleliu in Bahrain. And as a guy who grew up in Carson City, it's like, you know, Las Vegas was like world travel. And my daughter's going, where? So, you know, that stuff that goes with that and all that other sort of stuff. But I couldn't be prouder of her for what she chose to do in terms of driving a Marine Expeditionary Unit around twice. So it's one of those things where I tell people, I say, listen, you talk about people who have served, and that's a great thing. And the only thing that is more, because we tend to be younger, we're bulletproof and invisible, we're going to live forever when we're doing it. But when you're a parent sending somebody over, it just sucks. Because it's not a control thing, it's your protection thing, that other sort of stuff. And so they talk about how many veterans we're creating, and we are creating a ton. But they've all got a couple of parents and other family members that are like, you know. So, I haven't, to be honest with you, nobody's asked me about the draft. I haven't thought about it. I can tell you this. One of the primary things that everybody agrees the federal government ought to be doing is provide for the national defense. And how that's done is something that we should talk about and explore, and, you know, because that's supposedly job one. And you look at the politicization of defense in terms of, you know, how many aircraft carriers do you have? How many Army divisions do you do? Do the Marines get a new VTOL aircraft? What about the Flyboys and the F-22 and all that other sort of stuff, which not only provides for the national defense, but has a huge shadow for the economy of this country in terms of technology and education and all the things that go with that, balance of trade, all that other sort of stuff. So, with that, I can tell you that I'm not on the Armed Services Committee. But one of the reasons, quite frankly, is Joe Heck's on the Armed Services Committee, who's a Nevada guy, continued his after active duty career in the reserves as a medical guy. So, you know, doubling up on armed services was something I don't know if I could have done if I'd asked for it. But I don't, by virtue of that, I don't get briefed every day, similar to the president on what that's doing. Although an interesting aspect to your question is this. The president has set a time frame for when he wants to be out of Afghanistan. Now, this gets into foreign relations, which is, you know, I think part of the answer to your question is, I thought it was a very curious reaction of the country. A couple of months ago, it was like, you know what, we may be getting ready to go pop some caps in Syria. And everybody knows what the stereotypes are. These guys are hawks and these guys are doves, whatever. It's like, you know what, there was pretty much a crescendo, I dare say, bipartisan in the old-fashioned sense of, you gotta be kidding me. We're not, you know, and I like to think of myself as a fairly rough and tumble guy. It's like, absolutely not. So when you talk about bringing people home and whatever, and those sorts of things, I wish I could remember the name of the book. It's been out for a few years, but it was very thought-provoking in me. It was a print reporter that embedded with a Navy destroyer, a Special Forces A-team, the guys and girls down at Nellis that flew drones, hog pilots for the Air Force, all those kind of cutting-edge units. He was on a nuke boomer submarine, and it was one of the parts of the thing was hog pilots, grunts, hog pilots, and something. I'll find the book and put it on the website. Interesting reading on national defense, though. It talks about light footprint versus heavy footprint. And that the answer to every question is not send a carrier strike group over there, launch the planes, shoot the Marines ashore, follow up with the Army folks, tomahawks, stealths, all that other sort of stuff. Talking about those instances where it makes more sense to fill a void that creates the danger to your national defense, which in some cases is, if you're in this country, the only growth industry is opium. And until you give them something else to do besides opium, that's the only company in town hired. So what do you think these folks are going to do? And I think it is thinking like that that has got us at the point where you go, listen, we have the capability in this country through renewables and through traditionals to be energy independent. And also with that technology and those things to help our allies too. So having to go to war over energy is something that we can remove as something that we have to do. We have the ability in this country, if you can get over whether I got a trunk or a tail, to be self-sufficient economically, balance the trade, do those sorts of things where it takes care of all of those things. And so to get back to where we started, the president set a timetable, he's moved it up. I don't think you're seeing a lot of screaming and yelling about that. The bad part, though, is because we're sitting in a veterans thing, as you say. I don't know if we should have got there or not. It was 10 years ago. How we got there, although I can tell you this, the amnesia on 9/11 is amazing. And I'm saying those were 3,000 civilians. They're not in his hospital or his claims program. Those are people who made the mistake of going to work that day on American soil. And you go, wow, I don't know what we should have done, but that is unprecedented in terms of securing your country from a threat. But that notwithstanding, I think you're seeing a shift in terms of when you put your people in harm's way. I think you're seeing a realization that you can't just stand off and shoot Tomahawk cruise missiles and send in stealth aircraft and think that will make the problem go away. There are certain messages you can deliver, but if you want to close the deal, you're going to have to put people into harm's way in an old-fashioned boots-on-the-ground sense. And that is something that I think Syria was a very real check for where we at this point in time, because I'll tell you, early on there were a few people who said, okay, I support the president's flag. But I'll tell you what, somebody says, oh my God, they avoided a tough vote. It wouldn't have been a tough vote. I mean, I don't predict how the other 434 people vote in the House. I can tell you what, for what it's worth, my opinion, wouldn't have been a tough vote. And guess what? There have been Republicans and Democrats going, no thank you. I think the timetable is it's a year or 18 months or something like that to be out of Afghanistan. The complicated part is this. Right now, we don't have a great track record in foreign policy. And so you've got talks open again with the Iraqis. Like, hey, maybe we need some help. You're like, well, who's in charge of Egypt and what's going on? What's the bottom line in Libya? You've got the Benghazi complicating factor there. You've got the Israelis watching the Iranians with it's like it is a phenomenally complex time in terms of what are the right moves in terms of our national security and quite frankly, our allies. So I can tell you that I think you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a long tunnel on Afghanistan. I think there will be real hesitation to get involved elsewhere, short of something catastrophically kill civilians on American soil. And the going forward question will be, though, is, you know, I'll use this anecdote, because I told him I used it before, and he's okay. I'm walking back to my office after a boat series with Duncan Hunter from San Diego, former Marine. Dad was in the Congress. I'm trying to think what the vote was on, and anyhow, we lost. And I'm sitting there going, what the? Because we're getting ready to come back for a constituent work period like this. I know I'm going to get asked about it. What are you going to say? I said, I don't know what to tell him. And he says, big wins. I said, what do you mean big wins? He goes, big Army wins, big DOD wins, big. I go, what are you talking about? And he says, listen, the command structure at the top are human beings too, okay? And I'm not saying they're evil people, but those guys and girls want their next star. You know? They're fast burners, they're high achievers, and guess what? They're in this administration, whatever. So when you talk about, okay, the sequester on the Department of Defense, and you say, hey, training's going down, ammunition's going down, armory for Humvees is going down, you know what isn't going down? The Green Fuels Program for aircraft and ships. Now you may say that's an important thing to me, and I'm glad they're doing that. I sit there and say, that's one of those things that's nice to have after you take care of the core stuff, but it's like, hey, these guys and girls aren't going to cut that stuff, that they're going for this. And so you sit there and go, it gets back to what we talked about, it's like, Jesus, what the hell is going on inside the Beltway? So I think you're going to see an end to it pretty quick. I don't know the time frame, but I know there is a time frame. And I think you're going to see a lot of caution, as much for the fact that not when you got in, whether you should or shouldn't have, because I think there was a lot of emotion with that and it supported it, but the fact that we're still taking care of business a decade plus later and have created a ton of business for these folks, and the collateral stuff for family members like yourself is something that's like, hey, that's a pretty significant thing when you talk about it in terms of the budget of a nation, the psyche of a nation, small towns, large towns, families, you name it. So I think the end's in sight. You know what you can do is we'll get you make sure we know how to get a hold of you. We'll get you the information on when the Afghanistan is set. Because it's not that those things can't change.
The squeaky wheel gets the horn. I don't know if you're getting thousands of calls every day from your constituents.
I got a ton on Syria. I got a ton on Syria. Got a ton on Syria.
It just bothers me as a parent. It's not like we're living in the Vietnam generation where, I mean, if there are 45,000 veterans in Reno and all of us have parents, brothers, fathers, siblings that served in the Korean or Vietnam War, now because our demographics are different and our war times are different with Desert Storm and the longevity of everything. My son was 10 years old when the Russians were giving the munitions and everything for the opium in Afghanistan, and he's 25 now, and there's nobody beating down the door. So do I need to be a pest to Congress, to all the senators and congressmen and women?
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get you the information. If you don't like it, then I guess you do.
I mean, as a mother who's very active in the VFW, the Ladies Auxiliary, and Joint Support Services, and ESGR, advocating constantly, you know, when they come home, hire our men and women. Yeah. All those things, it's like I see Americans in my hometown. They don't sacrifice anything. These men and women are going off, risking their lives. People go to the movies, they're having a good time at football games. Nothing as an American are we sacrificing except for less than 1% of our citizens are impacted now. And it concerns me. So I thank you for your response. I want you to, you know, stay on top of bringing our troops home and rebuild Iraq so that we can maintain our oil interests. But that's something I'm very concerned about.
Make sure we know how to get a hold of you. We'll get you the specifics to that. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Nick Lazzarino. I'm one of the post 9/11 Marine Corps veterans. First of all, I wanted to thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Thanks for coming.
Secondly, you know, my generation wouldn't recognize you if we saw you at a Fat Burger at lunch. That's just the facts of the matter. Whether
That's probably a good thing for your generation.
whether it's the education system in Nevada, You know, we can point a finger in a lot of different directions, but I want to thank you again because it's small steps. I mean, boots on the ground here at home with the representation that we have, seeing the direction that you want to take in those good steps. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, we learn lessons from prior veterans. You know, World War II down, that's who we're learning from. The service organizations that they've built, that they've developed, that are strong, it didn't get built in a day. I mean, they're still struggling, and we're learning from them. So if we can take everyone else's mistakes and put our best foot forward, you know, here in Nevada, we need the help, and it's good to know that you're giving it to us.
You know, Nick, thanks. There's two things you hit on that I want to stress as kind of takeaway things, if you agree. And that is this. Fixing stuff is not an instantaneous thing, but you got to start. Okay, you got to say, all right, these guys have a claims problem, so they've started. It's like, well, when did you start? Where are you now? When do you think you're going to finish? Those are all fair questions, no matter what the issue is. The second part is this. You got to start. The second part is, and after you've started, you got to come back and say, we're farther down the field than we were 6 months ago, and you've got to keep it going so that, and you know why that is? Because that builds a thing that is lacking right now, which is called credibility. Because right now there's no credibility in D.C. I'm not saying that as a drama guy, I'm just saying there's no credibility. And I mean, if somebody says you're wrong, I think there is, then I'd love to hear it, because if you're right, I'll use it. But I'm not feeling that. So I think that if you look at your people, and I'm one of them, and say, what are you doing to work the issue? I don't care. I don't care what you're registered as. I mean, we all got to pick something, and I picked what I think best fits me. I don't care what you're registered as. I want to know what you're doing on the issue. Do you know the issue, and what are your thoughts? You know, what are you going to do about wild horses? What do you know about it? God, no, I take that back. But it's the same thing. On veterans issues, economic issues, it's like, yeah, I know what the talking points of the parties are, and I know all that stuff, and I know all the 30-second bites from the national news media. What do you know about the issue, and what are you going to do about it? And maybe that's my tilt at the windmill, which is until we focus on the issues, as long as you continue to play for political victory, the issues will be ignored. The issues will be ignored. Which is why, how about this? We come to this. Actually, there is some hope for veterans issues because, other than when the government's shut down, it's not a political thing. It's, okay, how do we get resources? How do we make this the best deal we can? Is it there yet? Nope. But you know what? The idea is to keep it moving. And so I want to end. Is there any other questions?
Going back there.
Okay. I don't want to end, but I do want to say this. And I say it every time, but I want to underscore it. When we started doing this, it was like, you know, because what do you want to do? And I says, I just want to meet with these people quarterly. We'll move it around, and we'll see what they got to say. We'll give an update, and then we'll see what's on their mind. They're happy, they're mad, they're whatever. You know, it's like, well, these guys are a pretty tough audience. I mean, yeah. Well, I just soon go to them than have them find me, because if they got to find me, they're going to be even more angry. But the fact that the governor's office and the claims office and the hospital folks and all the VSOs that come to these regularly to be part of this communication, because it isn't my thing, it's your thing, to be part of that, to say, hey, if there's a problem we can help with, I cannot thank you folks enough. And now you've got the regional director here. You know, and today, you guys have got, you know, 3 pretty influential staff members on the subcommittee, you know, sitting there. And, you know, the fact that there's not a lot of people here, it's like, you know, we have ones where there's more people rather than less. So don't get discouraged by that. I mean, I'm not discouraged by it. It's like, hey, people make it when they can. We try to have some during the day and some farther into the evening. We were in Fallon until sunup that one night almost, or whatever. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm starting to twitch, but anyhow. So anyhow, I don't want you to leave and be discouraged about, geez, there was only, 40 or 50 people or whatever. It's like, listen, people circulate in and out and that sort of stuff. We're going to keep doing it, so don't worry about that. So anyhow, I appreciate that, but it's I'm grateful for this, and I'll tell you, you're going to hear a lot from me in the next year. I don't want to hear about your politics. I want to know what you know about the issue and what you're going to do to change it. So I'll just throw that out as maybe something to think about. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've kind of centered on the people that have come back with problems and difficulties, but there's a lot of young men and women who've come back with no difficulty at all, have done things right, have finished their education, and they're having a tremendously hard time finding a career and finding the contacts to have a career. Are there any resources for these young folks?
Well, yeah, actually there are. I can tell we've passed several pieces of legislation that talk about preference and stuff like that, but, and I mean, half of your staff, more than half of your staff is veterans. I know there's specific job outreach at the state level for veterans. So we've got some programs, not that that's fixed it. We're going to do more, but if you have somebody who's struggling to find, it's like, hey, I'm back and there's nothing for me to do, let us know. We'll get involved and hook him or her up.
Yeah, I do have one. It's near and dear to my heart because he's going to have to find a job somewhere away from Reno in his career field. There's no doubt about that.
Well, Senator Hell's got a job for it.
That'd be good.
Kidding.
He needs a resource to make contact with these kind of things.
Make sure Mr. Gray knows how to get a hold of you before you leave,
okay.
And we'll hook up with you and see what we're working with and how best to assist. But I don't want to make that an individual thing.
Yeah.
The focus on veterans' jobs for this group that's coming back, as young people, it's like, okay, we need to do something about that. So that's been on the screen for a couple years. It's still being worked. There's been stuff done, and we can even let you know what's been done. Not that in a general sense, but we'll also try to throw a dart through it.
Excuse me, sir. I wanted to point out that Nick, who just spoke a minute ago, is with the Department of Education, Transportation, Training and Rehabilitation.
Dieter.
And he's part of a great crew of folks.
I work for Dieter.
Okay, well, you're with
Dieter is
Dieter.
going to be a resource for this young man.
All right, well,
Okay,
let me give you a card also.
He needs something for the veteran, or something that will reach a lot farther than Dieter's going to reach for him.
Yeah, I'd like to give you
I'll
my
take
card
that challenge.
afterwards, because we have some resources also.
You just got the jarhead for the job.
You just asked a question, you're going to get attacked. So I hope you love that question. Yes.
I just want to mention that we are working with veterans. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to go down to the Heroes to Hire job fair in Pahrump.
Yeah.
The Green Zone is starting to put jobs on. Dieter is part of the new transition with the GPS, the virtual sites, the transition things. The key to all that with the service members is learning how to transpose all their skills and training that they learned in the service onto a resume. And that's the downfall that I see right now, that a lot of them don't know how to do that. But now with the VMET coming out and the big push that the governor's doing with the transitions, we're getting the training out there. And I know it's a slow process, trying to revamp the wheel. Instead of everybody used to do one resume, we do 14 of them with different jobs. It's
targeting them.
Yeah. So it's changing a little bit, and I know it's taking time. But even down the Resource Center on Plum Lane Armory, off of Kitski. Yeah, we've been pushing that. We have kiosk computers there. I'm there to help with resumes. I have a job bulletin board down there I'm starting to work up. I work with Job Connect, and I've been going out to the local services to try to reach out.
So maybe you can help me with my resume, huh?
When you're ready, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your willingness to work with me.
Because this is a great conversation, but I don't believe it. And here's why I don't believe it. Because I talk to a lot of warfighters, a lot. And the issue is not finding out new programs. The issue is not getting the word out. The issue is discrimination. The issue is PTSD phobia. 46% of human resources managers in this country say hiring a veteran is a challenge. That's a bunch of crap. Because if they said if hiring a black guy is a challenge, it would be discrimination. woman, it would be discrimination. But they say it about warfighters, nobody squawks about it at all. It's PTSD phobia that's the issue.
Well, then why don't you, when you're aware of it, let Mr. Gray know, and we'll follow up.
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. Yes?
Congressman, I came up here with the last time, local Army engineers, so we all, we go out with the problem of it. I've seen all the problems addressed this evening. People talk about it. There's no loss of knowledge that there's problems, that there's a delay. So, seeing that all of that stuff has been addressed, I wanted to also point out the fact that our Reno hospital, they're doing a great job. They really are. Our Nevada Office of Veterans Affairs, doing a great job. Every time I've called up there, my Veteran Services officer, he's given it to me straight. He hasn't popped smoke on me. He hasn't given me the runaround. He's told me, well, it's taking time. Don't expect it to happen soon. And so I just wanted to let them know they're doing a great job. The only thing that I'd like to really see is more outreach to like our Douglas County Clinic. It's just so understaffed. If I need to make an appointment, I plan 6 to 8 months out for an appointment just because there's no staff down there. I've been down there for 2 years and had like 5 different doctors now. So it'd be nice to see someone down there. And also the food in the hospital, that needs to change. It really does. I was there for 5 days and I lost 28 pounds. So but other than that, I just wanted to compliment them.
Dang, I only lost 12.
I haven't been in any hospital with good food.
Let me tell you what will make you appreciate hospital food. Airport. I never met anything I didn't like, and this job involves a little bit of flying back and forth. And I mean, I'm starting to look at apples seriously. But we'll follow up in terms of what's going on with is the clinic in Minden?
Yeah.
Actually, I have an update on this.
I can speak to that. So we just I think it's people out there. We just added another provider not too long ago, full time. Prior to that provider, someone joined us from Indian Health Service, looked like a great candidate.
I think you were actually one of my doctors, weren't you?
I might have seen you down there filling in at that time with me. Both are working out very well right now. We are already looking for a third provider. And we have decided that we can't just limit it to physicians. We've opened it up to independent nurse practitioners to draw a broader net out there. And we're about ready to move into the new clinic, which is just south too. So we'll have the space. We already have the resource approved, and we're looking hard for physicians and nurse practitioners. I will tell you, in rural Nevada, it is a challenge. It reminds me of when I was up north of us trying to staff Alaska. When you get in these highly rural areas, it is hard to find clinicians that will work there. I mean, I'm blessed to have, we just had another clinician accept a position to help cover Fallon and Winnemucca. He hasn't started yet, he's on the way in.
Sucker hunter, huh?
Yeah, so that's a challenge. My clinician up in Susanville, to be honest, he'd like to come back to Reno. We're looking for someone, and he's been very gracious, and he's going to hold down the fort up there for us until we can find someone to backfill there. But it is a challenge in these smaller areas to keep someone staffed. Minden's been kind of an enigma for me because it's a beautiful place to live. So HR has been working very hard on advertising. We sent out 1,500 advertisement memos to existing providers in the general area to let them know we're looking. So I believe we'll get a third candidate down there soon. Right now, the two, with the number of patients we have down there, they're full. They can keep their head above water, but they're full. We need that third team, and we're working on that.
And you've got the best staff around. I mean, I think it's Mike at the front counter. He's the only person I know that he'll say, I don't know what's going on. I'll call you back here in about 10 minutes. 12 minutes goes by, he calls back, he says, I'm sorry, I'm late getting back to you, but I found out what you're doing. You have a great staff.
So, appreciate the feedback.
Maybe the Affordable Health Care Act will help you with recruiting. I wish that was a joke. It's probably not.
We've had a lot of staff uptick. coming to fill critical vacancies. I could run down a laundry list of very difficult to recruit and fill subspecialties, whether it's cardiologists, hem-onc, infectious disease, primary care physicians. All in the last year, we filled a tremendous amount of those positions. I think there is a lot of uncertainty there, and it is driving some of that. Clinicians are looking to the VA as a good, solid career choice now, so we've been beneficiaries of that.
The bad news is your customer base is probably going to grow.
Well, we can handle that.
Oh, yeah, big time.
The good thing is,
Let me just tell you, your folks at the national level said out of the 7 or 8 million people out there that aren't in the system, I know there's some means testing stuff, but they projected 63,000 might end up in the VA system out of that. Now, I'm not a doctor or a hospital administrator, but I was sitting next to one on the committee who was going, really? So business will probably get better.
Be happy to see him send them the money.
Yeah, yes ma'am.
Congressman Amodei, thank you very much for coming down tonight. My name is Cindy Martinez, and I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, 1980 to 1984, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
That's what I was doing. Thanks for making me feel better.
And I got a lot of information. I really appreciate that, and I'm very grateful for the services I get from the VA. I've never had a bad experience there, and I'm deeply grateful for the service that I've received there. So thank you so much.
thank you.
And so I don't want to go too far afield. The news lately in the last few weeks has made the top of my head fly off. And I would summarize it by saying, I work hard for what I do, to take care of myself, provide for my retirement. I don't plan on relying on anybody to take care of me. I believe in being self-sufficient. I resent a government that finds a need to be in my grocery cart, in my bedroom, in my doctor's office, in my wallet. I'm tired of it. And then I'm tired of the lies coming from the idiot box. And I'm curious to know if in the conversations in the hallways of Washington, if there's any kind of, sometimes I almost wonder or feel like the leaders and staffers or whatever look at us as like a sheeple population with endless resources and that we can continually be fleeced. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. And I'm concerned about after this, if this Affordable Care Act doesn't fall apart, that if this trend continues, that a government believes that they can take care of these most intimate aspects of our life. And there was a congressman that did this back in the Midwest who introduced a bill to take people's 401ks to provide for a guaranteed retirement. I have been skimping and saving and socking money away so I don't have to be on the dole. And the thought that they might find a reason to take that away from me to provide for the greater good chaps my hide. Thank you, sir.
You've been very eloquent. A couple things come to mind. I got there in 2011 in a special election. So there was a bunch of people that got there in 2010, and there was a bunch more that got there in 2012. Now when I say there, it's the House of Representatives. That's the circle I travel. So I can't tell you, I don't know what goes on in the Senate any more than you do, other than, hey, they said on the news, whatever, although I will say I had no idea that John McCain and Lindsey Graham were the two smartest human beings ever to be born in the United States of America in the history of the world. But that's not what you're here for. So I'm picking on Republicans, but anyhow. So I can tell you in the circle that I travel in, a lot of those people came there to make a difference. Now, different people define making a difference different ways, but they had an abiding belief that the train was on the wrong track, and so you needed to get it back on the right track. Now, it's not like, we're talking big tracks because it's a diverse nation and all those sorts of stuff. But there is a frustration level there where people are going, how do I come back and say, hey, I'd like 2 more years? And you say, well, what have you done? And you say, well, we've worked on public lands, we've worked on the debt, we've worked on veterans issues, we've worked on energy issues, the whole thing. It's like, and here's the specific things. But I can tell you that I've made a conscious decision in terms of when you talk about your head's ready to, it's like, listen, I can't control the national media. And I'm not saying they're bad people, I'm just saying their mission is to fit in a 20-second or 30-second chunk of time, a story. And if it's a lot of time, they give you a minute. Now, how are you going to talk about claims in a minute and do it any justice? Or how are you going to talk about coming home from Afghanistan in a minute? Or how are you going to talk about energy policy in a minute, or health care, or whatever? But they do it, and that's their mission, and so they meet mission. But what you walk away with, you sit there. I mean, I came back. I don't know what it was, 4 weeks ago, telling everybody that I don't think I can take her, but I'm going to start a fight with Greta Van Susteren. Oh, they're home. It was August. It was August. They're on vacation, and they're not. You know, they're on vacation, and whatever the thing was, and you sit there and go, you know, maybe somebody is, but quit painting everybody with the same brush. You know, we didn't take the time to go on vacation. We put about 2,500 miles on a pickup going around Congressional District 2 doing things like this. So when the source of most people's information about Washington, D.C. is delivered, and listen, I don't care whether you're MSNBC or Fox or any of the other ones, when it's delivered in those contexts, I get to the point where I can't watch it anymore. And it's not because I may disagree. It's like, we're going to disagree all the time. It's like you are providing context that has so been violated that it's not accurate. And you're sitting there going, what are these people thinking? So you get back to those people that have been there, 2010, 2012, and there's a lot of frustration. You're seeing some people right now that are very capable, intelligent people, trying to make a difference, who are starting to go, you know what? I'm getting out of it. And they'll give other reasons for the most part, family, job, that sort of thing. And it's because of that frustration, because you mentioned the leaders. And it's a phenomenally challenging time to be a leader on either side of the aisle. But when the leaders become consumed with political sport over policy, nothing gets done. That's my opinion after 25 and a half months. Nothing gets done. And so, nothing changes on the budget, nothing changes on the debt, nothing changes on education policy, nothing changes on immigration, nothing changes on, and you sit there and go, these are all issues that need to be dealt with. And I might be upset with how you deal with them, but somebody needs to pick up the bat and swing. That's not happening. And so the challenge is, I'll tell you one of the things, because quite frankly, there are times when you walk back to your office after a vote and go, what are we doing? And I'll be quite honest with you, there's two things that have kind of been my backstop so far. And one of them is, it is an honor and privilege to be given this responsibility by the people that you work for. So as long as you have it, swing the bat as hard as you can. Okay? Give them the full value of having somebody in that seat fighting for the issues. Okay? The second one, which is it's like, hey, I know for sure that I've lost if I quit. I know I've lost on those issues if I quit. But that's what it gets down to sometimes. Do I still think, and listen, this is not about things need to get back the way it's like, with all due respect, don't tell the governor I said this. Okay. Well, thanks for being honest about that. The governor got mad at me at the last Lincoln Day circuit because the sequester was getting ready to go in, and the president was saying, we can't have this sequester thing happen. It'll ruin the recovery. And I said, did I miss the recovery? And so the governor comes up and goes, hey, we're the farthest back of any state. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to find a different way to phrase that. I'm still working on that. But that notwithstanding, I can just tell you that I've made the conscious decision since before the shutdown. It's like, you know what, I can't. You might as well get over whatever the national thing is. The only chance I have is to be as communicative as possible to the people that I work for. And that's 11 counties in Nevada. So we're trying to do more telephone town halls. We're not going to mail stuff to you anymore. It costs $70,000 to do a mail. If I write a letter to all of you and mail it to everybody at CD2, by the time you print it, mail it, you know, it's $70,000. It's like, you know what? You want to talk about efficiency? It's like there are more efficient ways to communicate with you. No disrespect to the Postal Service, but it's like I'm not spending $70,000 of your money to send you a letter. You can get on a telephone town hall, much cheaper. Obviously, we like to be out in the district in rooms where somebody can go, I think that guy's an idiot, or maybe he's okay, or whatever the heck. But we're going to try to be more aggressive in communications in the district, and not saying here's what you think or you should agree with me, but saying here's some facts we think are important. You're more than capable of making up your own mind. Do with them as you please, and make your mind up as you should. So I'll tell you the next break point for me is, you know, a lot of people are like, oh geez, you voted against opening the government back up. And it kind of gets back to the hospital thing, which is, we're here, we need to make these changes now. They're incremental changes. This was nobody's first pick, but if you don't change the way you're doing things, you won't do things differently. If you continue to borrow 40 cents of every dollar you spend, you will continue to rack up debt in the trillions of dollars, which I think is a bad thing. Having said that, after the first of the year, you're going to be back again with what are you going to do on the debt ceiling, although, you know, that still have the ability for extraordinary measures, so maybe the debt ceiling will go till the end of the summer or whatever. But you've got the funding government thing. And I'll be honest with you, it's like, listen, shutting the government down shouldn't be like, okay, first pick is shutting the government down. It's like, but when you keep sending stuff over and you get no response, just do what I say, you're like, well, you know, I think healthcare is something that affects everybody. Maybe we ought to talk about that. Nope. No, I think so. I don't know. It'll be an interesting break point to see. I don't think you'll see the government shut down again. The challenge for those of us who believe that the budget and the economy and the debt are important things will be, how do you create some progress in the normal course of events? And that's a big challenge, but it's like, let's go try to do it. But you know what? I mean, I said this earlier in the meeting. If you don't meet the challenge, I think the healthcare thing, not a drama guy, I just think by the time that everybody has, except for the VA people, now you guys must be basking in the light right now. By the time people who are not in the VA system, or people who are employed in the executive branch of government who are exempt from the healthcare system, you know, you talk about all this stuff, it's like, did you know that the base law says President, Vice President, Cabinet members, executive branches, anybody here work for BLM? They're not covered by the Affordable Health Care Act. Forest Service, Department of Labor, IRS, Health and Human Services, doesn't apply to them. I'm not telling you what to think, I'm just telling you that's a fact. So, I think by the time this thing plays its course, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'll tell you this. People like you are going to go, my head's exploding now, you're going to get 30 days down the road, past the rollout period. You're going to find out what it really means for you if you're not in one of those things. And you're going to do the very human thing, which is, I'm going to kill them all. and you know what? If that's what it takes to get things moving back in another direction, it's like, you know what? Okay. The objective is to kind of get it back in some rational direction.
And this is a really ugly thing that's happening, the polarization of this country. This isn't the country I expected in third grade. It's very demoralizing and disappointing in many ways. But something my father said when I was a kid was that if you want to get somebody's attention, reach into their pocketbook. And I think this is the pocketbook moment when people will finally wake up from their stupor.
Well, and let me tell you what, I've made the conscious decision to when I say here are the facts that I think, it's like we've got enough of Republicans and Democrats. I mean, that's our system, and I'm not saying, it's like, listen, I'm an R because I think that's what fits me the best. But it's like, you don't need to talk about that for these issues. And people look at that and they go, I go, it's not about what your registration is. Immigration isn't your registration. Healthcare is not your registration. You know? I mean, we proved VA is not my party affiliation. There's not a party for VA. It's you people better do the right thing for those folks. Try to do the best you can. But I'll tell you what, you get into all those other things, and I think we're at the point where healthcare is going to be the thing, and I say this very calmly, where it's like you're in people's pocketbooks, but you're also, since, you know, I'm one of those dinosaurs, baby boom folks, where it's like, you know, in 10 years, healthcare is 20% of the economy. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just saying in 10 years, healthcare is 20% of the economy. Now you make the decision on who you think ought to be running it and how it ought to be run. Well, that's a fairly depressing final note. Yeah.
Sir, last thing.
Final.
I want to thank you because I know you spend a lot of time out there in DC and you sleep on your couch and you do a lot of hard work for us, for warfighters, for veterans. I just want to say thanks for doing that. I know it's not all, you know, parades and roses and all that stuff. You do a good job for us, and I know you work harder than a lot of us know, and I just appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. Thank you guys for coming. Hey, and have a good rest of the week. If anybody's in oh yeah, we got one more announcement. Ken, listen, speaking of information.
Oh yeah, if you guys don't already get the news blasts or the press releases or the information that I sent out and you'd like to, please go ahead and sign up over here just with your name and your email address, and we'll start getting those to you. If you want to leave your phone number, you're welcome to, but pretty much email is what I really need if you guys want to start getting that information.
That's it for that. Nice to meet you.
What do you need, a pen?